Sonic games are pretty hit or miss. Sonic Team probably has one of the worst success ratios despite still being on their feet. Yet to many of us audience members, a lot of the times, the correct answer for what we want to see in the next future Sonic game is abundantly clear. Some of us love the classic style of simple 2D Sonic, and so when it gets made, it's everything we could have ever wanted. It's easy money and it's a no-brainer. And sometimes we are graced with a beautiful original Sonic game concept that really resonates with us and is almost immediately cast away again for some new attempt at how to reinvent Sonic, often to only more disappointing results. And now with the people behind Sonic possibly getting their heads in gear after the perfection of Sonic Mania, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to talk about the next most hyped up Sonic game that could possibly do with another sequel. After all, it's been 18 years since we saw a Sonic game of this type. I am of course talking about Sonic Adventure 2. While there are many divisive groups within the Sonic community, each with different opinions on what is the best Sonic game archetype, it's undeniable to say that the Sonic Adventure format is one of the highest contenders for the most popular Sonic format. So today we're going to be digging deeper into just how these Sonic Adventure games are structured to see how they could be adapted and translated for a modern day release, with a whole new slick of paint. This Video Game Friday we're discussing what if there is a Sonic Adventure 3. To start off, let's get into the actual history of the Sonic Adventure games and how the foundation of their concept work. Sonic Adventure was Sonic Team's first real attempt to make Sonic the Hedgehog 3D and had the gameplay of the blue blur running forwards, away from the camera at pretty much all times. The level designs incorporated large, blocky 3D platforming mixed in with long stretching segments to run fast in. And to assist with Sonic's movements and attack patterns with this new dimension, they gave him the homing attack to jolt ahead and lock onto enemies easily, alongside other upgrades like the Lightspeed Dash to zoom through a line of rings. In order to spread out the variety of gameplay, the game also introduced additional playable characters, each with their own movesets and goals to give players the chance to fly, shoot, or fish. And all of these ideas were wrapped tightly together with a heavily focused story that had each character retell events from their perspective, allowing for the cross of characters in each other's storylines. It was like narrative time traveling. This was the foundation of Sonic Adventure that garnered a good amount of attention, but the true success to the formula came from its immediate successor, Sonic Adventure 2. This is the game that fans hold up onto a pedestal for its polishing of the level design, introduction of investing characters and stories, and tweaking many of the issues of the original adventure. This time around, instead of balancing the gameplay of 6 different characters, each with different control schemes, story perspectives were instead told from either Team Hero or Team Dark, with each one holding 3 characters and gameplay types that mirror the other team. Now gameplay boiled down to just 3 formats of gameplay, allowing for a stronger focus on actual level design, whilst allowing for specific rivalries between the characters to brew more naturally. Add on to the fact that the overworld was scrapped because it wasn't all that good, and then there was an arsenal of new gameplay upgrades, and the sequel came off as a far more polished and succinct attempt of the already winning formula. Together with its whelming gameplay, fantastic story, and cool additives, Sonic Adventure 2 became known as one of the best Sonic games ever made to many Sonic the Hedgehog fans, and was left behind in history to cement its accolades as Sonic progressed into a much more dark and controversial path. So, with the foundation set, how can modern day Sonic be translated back into this winning formula? Well, for a start, visually there aren't as many dynamic changes needed as Sonic Mania. For the most part, 3D Sonic is still 3D Sonic, though it is true that Sonic has gone through many visual changes over the years. Even the original Sonic Adventure had 2 different Sonic the Hedgehog models, with one for the Dreamcast and a later, more modern, cool and lanky one introduced. And Sonic Adventure 2 only expanded the cool, lanky teen look further, perhaps to keep up with the grinding skater personality type. While a visual throwback would be cool to see, I certainly wouldn't call it a necessity. Gameplay-wise, only a small amount of changes would really need to be made, especially for Sonic. Modern games, while often very fast these days, have gotten into the habit of locking Sonic's controls away more from the players, often having long stretches of land to boost through and only directing Sonic into one of 3 lanes to follow. And while this gameplay option can be fun and exhilarating, it's not Sonic Adventure. See, the 3D gameplay of Sonic Adventure games are much more loose and open for the player. Turning the control stick around in a circle will have Sonic run around in an actual circle, and being able to go backwards is much more of a viable option. Part of the reason for that being the player is given more horizontal choices on the path they wish to follow, being given options to run upstairs, grind up the rails, or jump up boxes, for one example. Each direction leads to the same route, but may offer additional benefits. More modern games either give the players more vertical choices in brisk 2D segments, or choose to just scrap it entirely. And a lot of that also comes to the new move of Sonic's to physically boost ahead at any given time. This, while fun, has also kind of become the crux of Sonic the Hedgehog's level design, allowing many players to essentially skip ahead larger segments of land wherever they wish, and only really being unavoidable when having to go up, or being locked out of the control option entirely. For Sonic Adventure gameplay, this boost mechanic would most likely break most level design, which likes to focus on fairly fast, choice-based exploration gameplay, rather than the really fast blasting gameplay. And considering how Sonic Mania was literally allowed to dial back all of Sonic's moves into the time period of the game style with the addition of one new move, I would imagine a Sonic Adventure 3 could do very much the same thing, deleting Sonic's boost ability entirely. A first for the Hog in like 11 years. Having Sonic be able to move much more freely and without his boost, whilst giving him a good amount of speed and momentum to make him feel fast without destroying the sanctity of the level design, is pretty much 90% of the changes needed for Sonic to be translated smoothly back into the Sonic Adventure style. He could still have those lock-on UIs or that rapid-fire homing attack if he really wants to, perhaps as an upgrade to find, but generally, tweaking Sonic is relatively easy. Because next we come to the other characters. These days it's a rare occurrence to be able to play as characters other than Sonic, and almost all gameplay is that same going fast forwards or going briskly to the side. But what Sonic Adventure tries to achieve is more variety in its gameplay. Not everything is about speed and momentum, and with the diverse amount of characters available in the Sonic world, I could really see a lot of fan service in getting more screen time with some of these side characters. Whether it's just through additional playable characters in the co-op battle mode that should totally be online this time around, or as some kind of reskin options for the core characters. Or maybe I should save all those ideas for a Sonic Heroes 2 What If video. Regardless, whoever takes the reins as the player's avatar, there are two more core gameplay types. First is the treasure hunting segment. This has appeared in both adventure games and revolves around finding 3 elements scattered across a mini open world, equipped with digging and flying abilities and a radius-seeking radar to tell you how close you are. These admittedly are the most controversial elements of Sonic Adventure gameplay, as many claim them to be slow and boring, halting gameplay to exploring the same area just again and again. Ironically, the original game handled a better radar system that notified players of all 3 treasures at the same time, whilst the sequel locked up the radar until you found each piece. Other tweaks included a hint system, new moves for players, and faster movement speeds. A simple improvement to at least assist with the issue more is to return to the old radar system to shorten the length of these levels at least a little bit, but compared to the other gameplay options introduced in Sonic Adventure 1, the treasure hunting segment is probably the best of the litter, and can only really be tweaked or replaced entirely, which we may cover later on in the video. The third gameplay element has a third character controlling a mech which locks on and shoots down oncoming enemies, all while dashing forwards at a relatively good pace, occasionally jumping across gaps and jumping through platforming segments. And this gameplay style has room to be adjusted a little bit, considering the differences between the first and second game alone. However, most fans didn't have any major issues with these missions that required a definite change. Actually, a lot of people really hate the high-pitched buzzing from the lasers in the shooting segments, so obviously just replace it, get rid of it, come on, you're fine. I swear Sonic Adventure 1 did it better than 2. Hey, interesting fact, this time next week I'll be at the Edinburgh Fringe Festival for all of August. Uploads will stay as usual, but check out the Biscuit Barrel for some late night comedy sketches if you're in the area, or see some digital sketches online that we made earlier this year. Link is in the description. Otherwise, if you haven't already, subscribe. And back to the video. Now, this is just the basics of the 3 gameplay archetypes, and while there's always a possibility that a Sonic Adventure 3 could introduce an entirely new segment of gameplay format for whatever reason, something very prevalent to the basic foundation that has a much more concrete grounding to appear in a Sonic Adventure 3 is the character types. Clearly, playing as multiple characters with a time-traveling narrative is a really cool concept that could totally reappear to great reception in a new Sonic game. But something that particularly makes Sonic Adventure 2 stand out over the original is the option to play as the villains of the story as well. This alone brings an extra layer of new to the Sonic experience and allows for potentially more deep and interesting storytelling from the enemy's side. Originally, the three villainous characters were Dr. Eggman, Rouge the Bat, and Shadow the Hedgehog, and running with the topic of characters for Sonic Adventure 3, there's a handful of avenues that Sonic Team could wish to take, each having their own pros and cons. The simplest approach to the third installment's playable options is to have these same characters appear once again for Sonic Adventure 3, following the logic of Sonic Mania, where all progress and new character introductions can just be entirely scrapped to pull Sonic fans back into the 2001 age of Sonic, with less characters to juggle and more immersion for the world of Sonic Adventure. Another idea is to return to the idea of having the base characters the same, whilst giving fan service to veterans with different skins for some of the more diverse characters available. These could either control exactly identical to the character they're replacing, or at more of a stretch, they could maybe have slightly adjusted movement options, like Cream, Charmy, or Ray moving in slightly different flight patterns, which could either explore old level designs in new formats, or be introduced with mini missions a la Sonic Generations. Though too many options may be too overwhelming for Sonic Team, and you know where that usually winds up. Another option that I could somewhat see occurring is the introduction of a new team entirely, making the 2-team format a 3-team for the third game. Picture it as Team Hero and Team Dark with the normal gang, and then a third trio with some newer spin. If Sonic Team really can't let it go, then maybe there could be a Team Classic, featuring Classic Sonic, a customizable character, and Mighty or something. Or how's about Metal Sonic, Chaos, and Infinite, a kind of additional villain archetype from each era. And though this may push a little too into Sonic Hero territory, what about a female team of Blaze, Cream, and Amy? Or something else to that effect. As long as they mirror the base gameplay, I don't really see it being too big of an issue. Honestly, cramming in all these characters would be a way easier job for the Sonic Heroes format with all the large team options, but whatever. I might not be the best at putting together teams, but it could be a nice little way to throw something extra into the mix, if it's ever needed at all. As for the actual premise of the story, honestly I can't really give details. The Sonic Adventure games are pretty serious in tone, with a good chunk of cartoony action. It's oftentimes big and bombastic, and not simply taking down robots, but real organic monsters. Generally having the team at each other's ends or working on their own missions, occasionally crossing paths, building rivalries, and then having them combine together for a fight against a greater evil is a simple enough formula that I think is pretty pristine to go with again. Working alongside Dr. Eggman against a greater evil is always more powerful than him simply being the final boss again. As for integrating potential newcomers, that could come from anywhere. Appearing through a time portal of the classic universe only to get caught up in the main feud, witnessing the events from afar and chasing down something unseen to help with the events, or just being split trying to pick sides. As long as the threat feels real and authentic, I feel most of the fluff in the middle just needs to be dramatic and cool, with an intriguing story and great gameplay. No problem, right? So with all that in mind, putting all of these pieces together tells us on a basic level how the Sonic of the modern day can be translated back into the Sonic Adventure format. However, there's more that we can go into on the topic. After all, these games aren't 100 out of 100 games, and all we've done so far is just cram modern Sonic into the Sonic Adventure cutout. Let's talk about just what improvements can also be made for a Sonic Adventure 3. One major change that would naturally need to come into effect is the actual presentation of the cutscenes. Because all the story can be quite investing to some fans, but you really have to focus to absorb it all in. In the first game, animations are recycled and crazily animated, along with some terrible voice acting to make more memes than anything else. And Sonic Adventure 2 does a better job with its animation, but the music is too loud. Also, the audio cuts off depending on which version you have. I did appreciate the use of both in-game engine work for some cutscenes and fully pre-rendered works for other moments, but for Sonic Adventure 3, anything would be better than this abhorrent presentation. But looking at modern Sonic game cutscenes, it'll probably be fine. And continuing with presentation, a lot of the time, the camera work is shoddy in the actual gameplay segments for all characters as well, oftentimes jumping ahead for the next section of the level when you, the player, aren't quite ready for the next perspective. Ultimately, these are easy fixes that have likely already been ironed out with experience in the 3D realm for Sonic. The level designs themselves are also criticized quite commonly, with enemies appearing before you have a chance to react, unfair leaps of faith, and a lack of equality across the amount of stages in each core gameplay style. Interestingly, this seems to be because during the developmental stages, Tails, Shadow, and Rouge were added much later, which also explains their recycled assets. So simply bumping up the time focused on them and investing work on them can give some nice fresher experiences. There's also the additional little gameplay gimmicks that could breathe new life into a new game, such as snowboarding and rail grinding segments of Sonic and Shadow's levels that totally deserve more screen time opportunities, especially the snowboarding one. Or the one-off vehicle sections that could either be skipped for its odd layout or reworked and fleshed out. Sonic Adventure 2 also has a really interesting relationship with replayability and exploration of its levels, featuring hidden pathways and secrets that award players with new upgrades and movesets. These can greatly be expanded for a much more fulfilling gameplay experience, and the Chow Garden absolutely needs to come back. Add some extra elements like a new competitive tournament sport or some extra customizable. Throw in some basic online too to give yourself some Chow prowess or to battle it out against other players like the 2-player mode. Give us new objectives or simple races to really feed into that Sonic community. And who knows, maybe freshen up the formula with new little additives like new minigames, extra missions, characters or throwbacks. Just avoid fishing. Always avoid the fishing. As long as you can touch like half of all of that, then you're in for a goldmine of a Sonic experience. Sonic can still be cool and snarky if he wants to be, and he can still be the star of the show with the fan favorite speedy gameplay, but just slow him down a little bit. Give him some looser movement options, encourage him to explore, give him some friends to team up with, and mirror them over with some villainous types. Place them in a story that sets up rivalries and ends up with a threat that's bigger than themselves, add a flair of the best elements from the previous installments, and maybe spice up some older concepts. Chuck in some functional online work, and give us back the Chow Garden, and you're in for another easy moneymaker that gets most Sonic fans all riled up. And while I'm sure there will be people saying put in the Sonic Unleashed Day gameplay for Sonic and Shadow and pluck pieces across all of the rest of Sonic's history, just taking the best of the Sonic Adventure games and polishing it into a well-wrapped bow would be more than enough to make any fairly aged Sonic fan jump with joy. Because at the end of the day, these Sonic Adventure games are fairly simple. There's no crazy sellable gimmick, there's no immense reinventing of the blue blur, it's just an expansive story that encapsulates a bit more of the experience of Sonic's world, as it's not all about him as the sole playable inhabitant anymore, it's about the people he surrounds himself with, and the rivalries he goes up against. And though they're diverse, they're all fast and fun to play, in their own little way. But that's just a handful of ideas I could put together for the potential rise of a Sonic Adventure 3. But do let me know, are there other elements you would like to see focused on or tweaked about? How would you improve off of the Sonic Adventure formula, or what crazy add-ons could you think of to introduce to the third game? Got a better team composition? Then let us know. And if you were to replace the hunting segment with Knuckles and Rouge, what would you replace it with? Something from Sonic Adventure 1 or something new entirely? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, because I personally couldn't think of much. Or just send compliments. Kind words will always be greatly appreciated. Whatever your thoughts, I should end it all off here. I'll catch you again in 3 days for Movie Monday and another gaming video in exactly a week. But as for now, check out my links, have a look at the Biscuit Barrel if you're interested, or my new Instagram, as my name's been Daz. You didn't really care, and I'll see you in a bit.